showing now. So make sure that you can get to where you can see my screen and be able to move your stuff around too. The bar on your mechanical arm, your horizontal bar, that's what you're going to use to tape down the paper. Now, it's kind of like putting a poster up. If you slide it underneath and hold down the center of this bar, if you do that, that paper, there's a little ledge back there that paper is going to hit. Now, you have to hold it down pretty sturdy. Now, don't hold it so hard that it's going to snap this in two, because some of yours are just pure plastic. So hold it down, make sure the paper is flush up against that little ledge, put your hand on it. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put my left hand on it so I can move and do my tape with my right hand. And you probably want to tear your tape into 4 different pieces ahead of time. Let me move this down so it's on the screen. So just make sure it's flush, put your hand on it. When you put your hand on it, take one little piece of tape and put it on the corner. Now, you don't want to get too far onto the paper because your title block goes 1/4 of an inch in. So when you are doing this, you just want the very little corner of your paper. And then you're going to take your hand and smooth it out, just like you're putting a poster on the wall where you want it to be smooth. You don't want any wrinkles in your poster. And then once you get the top 2 put in, you have the tape on the top 2, you can smooth it down and do the tape on the bottom 2 corners. Okay? So if I were to zoom in on this, you can kind of see the difference. You can see where my tape is here. Okay? And it looks like I have lines already drawn on my paper. That's actually the lines to show me where I need to tape my paper down so it'll be centered in the screen. So I don't have anything actually drawn on my paper right now. You can just see through it. So for us, we're only going to do the border today and the title block. I'm going to show you how to use the lettering guide. So you are going to need to use your mechanical arm, so we need it. We also need a straight edge, which we're going to use our triangle for a straight edge. You may need your eraser shield. You will also need your lettering guide. And of course your pencil and your eraser. So here's some of the tools that you're going to need just for this exercise. We're going to use our architectural scale when we measure. I'll give you a second to get all those things and just have them handy. You won't want to put them on your paper like I have them, but you can have them out to the side so they'll be handy and you can get to them quickly. So we said on our border and title block, we're using ANSI A title block. And I have it on the overhead, but I'm going to put it right here for just a second so you can see up close. On the ANSI A title block, we draw a border around our whole paper, and that border is 8.5 or 8 by 10.5. Now our paper is 8.5 by 11. So we decided when we were doing our sketches that we go in 1/4 inch. Well, on the sketch we used graph paper, so we just went into the full line, that first line on the graph paper. But for us, we need to do it a little bit different since now we can actually measure and have to do these drawings ourselves. So on your scale, I want you to find the side that says 16, okay, because this is the 16 scale.
No one have any points set in graphite low.
So hold on and I'll get you another pencil. Just use this one for now. So on our 16 scale, we are measuring with architectural fractional inches, okay? So from the edge of your paper, you're going to put the 0 on the edge of your paper. And I know you guys, it looks like I already have a line there. That line is underneath, so try to ignore it on the screen. But put your 0 on the edge of your paper, and then just go in 1/4 inch. So remember, each one of these tick marks is 1/16 inch. So if I zoom in, where you can see it a little bit better, I zoom in, and each one of these are 1/16 inch. So I would count 4 over to get that 1/4. So far we've been using graph paper. We know a box on our graph paper was 1/4 inch, so we never really had to use our 16 scale that much if we counted boxes. But we're going to do that all the way around on all 4 sides of our paper. So just put your 0 on the edge of the paper and go in and put a little mark at 1/4 inch all the way around. So you're going to have 4 little marks here. So you can see I've got a mark here on top, on the right, and on the bottom of the sheet. Now, every line that you use, or every line that you create, you're going to have to use instruments now. So no longer are we freehanding or trying to keep it on the grid line. Everything's going to be exact, so we have to have exact measurements, and we have to use our instruments for every line. So for the horizontal lines, I'm going to use my drafting arm. So I'm making this line, or making my drafting arm be flush with my measurement. So here's my measurement dot. I'm bringing my drafting arm up, and then I am creating that line all the way across. Okay, so nice, straight, neat line. I'm not coloring it in. It should be dark. This is a border line, is the darkest line that you're going to make. And then whenever I make my horizontal or my vertical lines, I'm going to come up here and use my triangle. And I'm putting my triangle flush with my measurement mark. And I'm going to use it. So when you are drawing, it's kind of hard at first because you feel like you need 3 or 4 hands. You've got to have your straight edge. you've got to put your triangle flush on your straight edge, and then you make your mark. So you have to hold all these pieces of instruments together to make sure that they're not just moving around. Because if they move around, then your line is not going to be straight. Okay, and if you taped your line or your paper down at an angle and did not put it properly against your mechanical arm, then your lines, all of your lines are going to be drawn at an angle on your paper instead of what it should be. So far, I have my vertical lines, have one horizontal line. I'm going to move my drafting arm up to my other horizontal line mark and make it. And on my corners, I didn't quite make the corners touch. So even on a small line like this corner, I need to use my drafting instruments. So I'm making that flush with the line, and I'm filling that gap in that I missed. So everything has to be made with instruments now. Do not try to freehand anything. So now I have my border, and again, it looks like I have multiple lines there. I'm gonna take this paper out from underneath so you guys can see it properly. Otherwise, it's going to look like I have multiple lines from my border. So here's what it should look like. So now I've got my 1/4 inch lines all the way around. If we look at this title block again, we know when we were using sketch paper that we would go up 1.5 boxes because that was a 1/4 inch plus another 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so this first box in your title block is 3/8 of an inch, and then the second box is also 3/8 of an inch. So the total is 0.75. Okay, so now when we create this, we actually have to measure this 0.75. We have no blocks to go by, and we don't want blocks to go by. We want this to be accurate. So I'm going to put my 16 scale. I'm going to put the 0 on my border line, and I'm going to go up and just make a little mark at 0.75. So 0.75 of an inch, if I zoom in so you can see my scale, remember each one of these little marks is a 1/16 of an inch. So my 0.75 is going to be here. My 1/2 inch would be here. My 1/4 inch would be here. If this is an inch and this is my 0. So you guys don't do this on your paper. I'm just kind of showing you. And then this smaller mark would be an 1/8 of an inch. This would be 3/8, 5/8, 7/8. So breaking the inch down, we've got a 1/2 right here, 3/4, which is also 0.75, and then this would be 1/4. And then here's your 1/8 marks in between there. So if we zoom in on that so you can see if you've forgotten then that's what it looks like. That's how we break down our 16 scale. Okay? So back to our title block, we want to go up 0.75. And we can also go ahead and put our 3/8 mark here too. So 1, 2, 3/8 mark. So I'm going to put 1 at the 3/8, 1 at the 0.75 mark. So when I zoom out, you guys can see my 2 marks right here. That's my 3/8 mark. That's my 0.75 mark. Now these are horizontal lines, so I'm just going to take my horizontal edge, make it flush with my mark, and make my line straight across. It's going to be terminated by my 1/4 inch line here on the side. And I'll do that again. I'm moving my arm up. Now, when you are using your mechanical arm, you don't need to press this in. We have all the arms set to where they're already at 90 degrees. So you're just basically using the elbow to move. You're not turning this at all. We want to keep it at 90 degrees right now. So we're just moving the arm. We're not turning it at all. So then we'll come down here, we'll make that second horizontal line. And when we are going through the rest of our title block, we can look at our dimensions here. So we did the vertical dimensions of the 0.38 and 0.75. Now we have to make these lines, these divider lines. So the first one would be 2.25 on the bottom, 4.25 for the top and the bottom, 4.87. So these decimals in fractional form, 2.25 is 2 1/4. This would be 4 1/4. This would be 4 7/8. This would be 1 3/8. So I'm going to leave this up here because I'm drawing down on the bottom. We're going to go over that 2.25. So we'll put the 0 on the border line that we drew. Go over 2.25, make a mark. From there, actually, the 4.25 comes from the side as well, so I'm putting 0 on that mark. Come over here and make a little mark at the 4.25. From there, I can keep going. I can do that 4.87, which is 4 7/8. So we'll do the 4 7/8 mark. And then I'm going to use my straight edge to make these lines. So I am not at any time just free-handed lines. So I want to make sure my horizontal edge and my straight edge are flush before I make these lines. Yes. 3.38 was 3/8 of an inch. So I accidentally made an extra line here, so I'm just going to erase that. And this is where our erasing shield comes in handy, because now that we can't freehand our lines and it takes us a little bit longer to draw them, you want to protect the lines that you don't want to erase. So you definitely will put your erasing shield into good working order. So when I cover up the line that I want to keep and just erase what I don't, then I don't have to draw that line back. So it's a time saver to use your erasing shield. And also, now that we're using this vellum paper, we don't want to take our hand and just rub it across because we're going to smear all of our graphite. So we, especially now, want to use our brush and make sure that we are keeping everything clean. And you also want to keep your eraser clean. So when you get a buildup of graphite on your eraser, just take it over to the side and rub some of that graphite off so your eraser is clean. That way you're not building up smudges on your paper. We want to keep our paper as clean as possible. So in our title block, we want to have guidelines to help us create these letters at 1/8 of an inch tall. So it's very hard to do lettering. Even though we practice it, it's still pretty hard. So we're going to use these just standard holes on the side. Each of these holes are 1/8 of an inch different. Let me try to zoom in a little bit more. I may have to move my paper up for you to see this properly. Okay, so I moved my paper up so you can see the title block. What I want you to be able to see as well is if we look at these holes, they're 1/8 of an inch. So we should have a set of holes that line up with the bottom line of our title block, this middle line, and the top line. So you can see my holes, this one lines up with the top line, this one lines up with that middle line, and then this one lines up with the bottom border line. Now, what you have to do, what's not seen on the screen, is you have to put this lettering guide flush with your horizontal edge. Okay? So now you really do have to have 3 or 4 hands, it seems like, until you get good at this. But I'm putting my horizontal edge down. I'm putting my lettering guide flush with my horizontal edge. I want to line up the holes. So I want to have a hole on each one of those lines. So when you make it flush, make sure there's a hole on each one of those lines. Then you're going to take your pencil. So right now I'm just holding it to get my pencil in here. I'm going to take my pencil and put it in the 2 middle lines. So I have a line that's lined up with this hole. So the next 2 holes up are where I'm going to put my pencil. So I'm going to put my pencil in this first one and make horizontal guidelines. And I can make them all the way across. And I want to barely put any pressure on my lead, because I want my guidelines so light that I can barely see it. And then I'm going to come up to the next hole and do that as well. Okay, so now I have, if I zoom back in, now I have some lettering guidelines to keep my letter height what they should be. So in this box that I'm pointing to, I can put the date in there. Remember, I'm going to use all caps, and I'm going to use vertical uppercase Gothic font, which is the neatest font, the neatest, straightest, simplest font that I can do. So I'll put my letters, and then you can put today's date, which is 1/28. 22. Okay, so that is how we are going to do all of our lettering. This next one would be drawn by, and you would put your name. But we're using our vertical guideline, or our horizontal guidelines that we created with our lettering guide to create these boundaries for our letters. So we make sure that our letters are always 1/8 of an inch high. And if we use it properly and we use the correct holes, then we know that our letters are also centered within that title block. Okay? Now you can go back, once you finish the lettering, you can go back and erase some of your lettering guidelines. You should have drawn it so light that you don't really need to erase much. Okay? We also need to put lettering guidelines on that second layer of our title block. So if you haven't done that already, you can just line up your holes. Make sure that your lettering guide is flush with your horizontal edge, just like I've got it here. And do your next 2 holes on the inside, just like we did for the bottom here. To get those guidelines for that top piece. That tape is getting in the way. Okay? So that's how you create a border. You guys can continue until you get it finished up. I'm going to put this back on the other screen. But whenever it's completed, you'll have a nice title block filled in and border all the way around your drawing. So for today, you can do 2 or 3 of the borders. Just leave the drawing title and the figure number blank for now, and you can go back and letter that in whenever you use your borders next week. So if you have sketches still left to do, go ahead and get those sketches finished. If you do not have sketches left to do, then go ahead and start making up. We're probably going to do 7 or 8 drawings, so you can make up as many title blocks as you can get finished in the time that we have today. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Main things to remember are you have to use your instruments on every line. And you have to keep everything flush so your lines are nice and straight. I'm going to come around and answer your questions.